All right, could you give me a rundown on the pricing types under what circumstances I might want to use them? Stuff like use last price, bid ask, midpoint, use ask for buys and bids for sells. Is there any should people just focus on the default one? Is there any real reason to change them? Curious.
We default to the mark, but lately I've been thinking that we should change that default to use the last price. Um, but using technically, like I feel like using the bid or the ask, depending on the order type, might be the most accurate because it's really the scenario where this functionality gets used is you have a market order for your entry, but then you also have a take profit and a stop loss. And we don't know what the market order is going to be filled at. So we go fetch a quote and we use whichever price you have configured as the price to calculate your take profit and stop loss if it's a relative take profit or stop loss, meaning like it's a 5% or a $10 stop loss. We'll take that price from the quote and add or subtract that amount. And then that's the price that we send the broker. So you want to use the price from the quote that's going to be the most accurate. Um, and when you use the mark price, it kind of fails whenever you have a ticker that has a really wide bid ask. Because you basically get filled at a price that was wildly different than the price that was used to calculate the take profit or stop loss.
Okay, that makes sense. Excellent. I know I personally I've never changed those settings, even on other platforms. I'm wondering if I'm losing out by not doing it properly. Let's see here.
It just depends on how tight your take profit and stop loss is. You know, if it can change the outcome of your trade based on a 1 or 2 cent difference based on what your entry price is, then you want to be pretty careful about what you select there. Of course, your option beyond that is always to specify your take profit and stop loss prices in your payload. John's point is that this is only relevant when we do dynamic calculations on where your take profit and stop loss should be by some relative price to your entry. In this case, your entry is those options that you had selected, whatever the last is, the mark, the bid ask. And I like this idea of choosing bid or ask depending on the order type. I think that's even closer to accurate.
Yeah, I think either that or last should be the default instead of mark.
Yeah, I could see that.
Excuse me. I think there was a customer a couple weeks ago where there was a ticker that had a really wide spread, and he was using the mark. So we used the mark price to calculate his take profit, but then he got filled at something that was closer to the bid or the ask, depending on whether it was a buy or a sell.
Mm.
Cool. But I think there's another feature too that Mike and we've talked about. We could update the take profit or the stop loss price after the market order fills.
Yep.
And basically we would use the quote price as like a temporary price, but then immediately after the entry order is submitted, we would follow up and update the take profit and stop loss legs with a more accurate price. Yeah. I think that's doable.
That would be a future enhancement, but yeah, that's something I've wanted for a while because then it's actually based on your real entry price rather than the presumption we make based on those different options that were available.